Welcome to Job Bridges Japanese Language Training Center. We provide an online tutorial for people who aspires to work in Japan. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to keep you updated on our lessons to help you master Japanese language in no time. Konnichiwa minasan! Welcome back to Job Bridges Japanese Language video tutorial. And in this video, we'll be discussing about Lesson 14. So Lesson 14 will be divided into two parts because in Lesson 14, we'll be discussing about verb conjugation. Verb conjugation is a little bit difficult, so we'll be focusing about that on this video. Are you ready? So verb conjugations. Verbs in Japanese change their forms. For example, when they conjugate, and they are divided into three groups according to the type of conjugation. Depending on the following phrases, you can make sentences with various meanings. So again, verbs in Japanese are divided into three groups. So let's discuss them one by one. So group 1 verbs, okay, in the verbs of this group, the last sound of the mass form is that of the E line. So what are the E lines? Mi, ni, ki, shi, and so on. So example of verbs that are under group 1 is kakimasu, which means to write. It is under group 1 because the sound before the mass or the sound of the mass form is ki. And then another example would be nomimasu, to drink, because the last sound of the mass form is mi, which is also under the E line. Now group 2 verbs, these are the ones that are easy to remember. Okay, in most of the verbs in this group, the last sound of the mass form is that of the L line. So anything that is under the L line. Be, se, what else? Te, de, and so on. But there are special verbs which we'll discuss later on. So verbs that are under the group 2 verbs are 1, example, tabemasu, which is to eat, because the last sound of the mass form is the be. And then we also have misemasu, which is to show, because the last sound of the mass form is se. And mimas is also under this. This is under the group 2 special verbs. Again, we'll be discussing that later. And then the group 3 verbs, these verbs are those that are noun denoting actions. The one wherein we added shimasu. Okay? So action plus shimasu. And another verb that is included under group 3 is the verb kimasu, which is to come. So let's discuss about the verb te form. The verb form which ends with te or de is called the te form. So how to make the te form of a verb depends on which group the verb belongs to. So for this one, let's discuss first group 1 verbs. So depending on the last sound of the mass form under the group 1, the te form of the verb of this group is made as shown in the form or the table that I'll be showing you on the next slide. So note that the te form of the verb ikimasu is itte is an exception. So guys, remember, for group 1 te form of the verb, ikimasu, which is to go, is automatically itte. Remember that. So for the group 1, for the verb te form, here is the rule. So the verb whose last sound under the mass form is i, chi, and ri, it will be changed into te. And then for mi, bi, ni, ende. For verbs whose last sound is ki, it will be itte. And then for the last sound under gi, ide. And then for the shit verb, the te form would be shite. So again, ikimasu, which means to go, will be automatically ite. So if you're still having confusions under this verb te form, let me give you some examples. So the first example that we have is keshimasu, which means to turn off. Now the te form of keshimasu is keshite. Again, it's keshite. Why? Because the last sound of the verb mass form of keshite is shi. So again, from the rule, if the last sound is shi, it will become shite. So keshite. Next, isogimasu, to hurry. The te form of isogimasu is isoide. Why? Because the last sound before the mas is gi. So we'll transform gi into ide, remove mas, and then add it to iso, so it will become isoide. The next example is machimasu, to wait. So the te form of machimasu is matte. Again, matte. Why? Because the last sound of the mas form of machimasu is chi. So change the chi into ute, so it becomes matte. Now for hold or mochimasu, motte. Again, motte. Because again, the last sound of the mas form of mochimasu is chi. Now next, torimasu, to take or to pass something, totte. Torimasu becomes totte because the last sound of the mas form of torimasu is ri, totte. Next, yasumimasu, to take a rest. The te form of yasumimasu is yasunde because the last sound before the mas is mi, so it'll be nde, so yasunde. The next, tetsudaimasu, to help. So the te form of tetsudaimasu is tetsudatte. Tetsudatte. Yeah? And then yobimasu, okay, to call, yonde. Again, yonde. And then for tsukaimasu or use, tsukatte. Again, tsukatte. And then next, sit down, suwarimasu, suwatte. And then lastly, we have tachimasu, to stand up. So the te form of tachimasu is tatte. Now guys, take note of the one of tetsudaimasu. Okay, I think I made a mistake in there. So I really made a mistake. It should be tetsudatte, not tetsudaite. Tetsudatte, because the last sound before the mas is i, so it should be utte. So tetsudatte. Wakarimashita ka? I hope you understand. Now, for the group 2 verbs, this is the easiest one to transform. Alright, so attach te to the mas form. So the last sound before the mas form should be again in the e line. So the rule for this one is just to drop the mas and then just add te. Alright, look at the examples. Tabemas, the te form will be tabete. Misemas, to show, the te form is misete. For demas, to go out, dete. Tsukemas, tsukete. Yamemas will become yamete, and oshemas will be oshete. See, it's very easy compared to the group 1, right? Now, the one thing that you have to remember for group 2 are the special verbs. Why are they special? Because these verbs, they have or they are under e endings, which are supposed to be group 1, but then again, they are special. So even if the sound before the mas or the sound under the mas form is e, like ki, ri, chi, and so on, it is under group 2. So for this one, same rule that applies, of course, to group 2 is you just have to drop the mas and add te. So let's take a look. don't worry, there's just 12 verbs to remember that are under the special verbs. So we have okimasu, to wake up. So okite. You just have to drop the mas and then add te at the end. So okimasu will become okite. Then ikimasu, to be alive. Ikite. Okay? To get off, orimasu, is a special verb even though it ends in ri. So you just have to drop the mas and add te, so it becomes orite. Now we also have ochimasu, to fall. Te form is ochite. To wear or kimas, the te form is kite. Again, kite, not kite. It's kite. Then to exist, imas, ite. Not itte, not ite, but ite. Now to take a shower, abimas. So the te form for this one is abite. And to look or to see is mimas. Right? So the te form for this one is mite. So just drop the mas, then add te. Next, tarimas, or to be enough, tarite. The next, dekimas, can do, dekite. We also have sugimas under the special verbs. So sugimas, to exceed, sugite. And lastly, to borrow, which is karimas. So the te form is karite. Alright? Again, these are special verbs that even if they have e endings under the mas form, they are considered as group 2. Remember that. Now, the last but not the least, let's discuss the group 3 verbs. So this is as easy as your group 2. So attach te to the mas form of the verb. So again, these are nouns denoting actions. If you could remember from, I believe, lesson 5 or 6. Okay. So same, almost the same as with your group 2 rule. Drop the mas, add te. So for example, for shimas or to do, shite. And then we have kimas, to come. This is one of the specials but under group 3. So the te form for kimas, which is to come, is kite. And then benkyou shimasu, to study, benkyou shite. We just drop the mas, then add te at the end, so it became benkyou shite. And then to marry, from the noun kekkon, right, we add shimasu, so it became kekkon shimasu. Then for the te form, kekkon shite, to marry. Now, to have a meal, shokuji shimasu. So the te form for shokuji shimasu is shokuji shite. And then last example, sentako shimasu, or to do your laundry. The te form for this one is sentako shite. Again, sentako shite. Alright guys, so please do remember that you have to at least memorize the rules for transforming the verbs into their verb te form before you proceed to the part 2 of the lesson 14. Again, transforming verbs into te form is very essential as this will be, okay, the basis for most of the sentence pattern on the next or for our upcoming lessons. So please do remember or study again lesson 14 part 1 before you proceed to other lessons. You got that? Alright, that's just it for today. See you on our next videos. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to keep you updated on our lessons so you can master Japanese language in no time.
またねー。